What actually happens at an online baptism? August 13th, 2022. The logistics are easy enough to figure out. A pastor is likely on one side of the camera or another, and the baptizer is the same way, but conversely so. Which side they're actually on doesn't play into the issues that arise when you say something as bold as online baptism to a blogger like me. Baptisms are public declarations of faith in Christ and a symbolic death and resurrection of a new Christian in participating in, among the Christians that they will be in fellowship with. They can happen outside of a church context because the meaning behind them isn't church membership, but rather affinity and solidarity with Christ's church. The online aspect of these new kinds of baptisms is again where the thing/place distinction shows up. More on that later. If the baptism is being performed to witness a new Christian joining the church body locally, then the internet does what it does best and connects the separated person to the church via video and audio on the streaming platform of the church's choice. It's the together and at the same time before the internet. Is that together or at the same time? Before the internet, you could not baptize yourself in a bathtub and then let your pastor know by letter that you are doing so and then have it mean what it means when you get baptized in the presence of a congregation or the public in the case of open water baptisms in rivers and lakes. What actually happens with an online baptism is a written account of the events in both directions in real time. The happenings of the baptizer are being written into computer code by the camera, translated into different code by the computer and the internet network, and then translated a third time, at least, by the screen on the receiving end. Because this is happening in both directions, so the congregation can witness the baptism and the baptized person can see the congregation, we double this transmission process, or translation process. If we slowed the technological quality down to introduce lag, the congregation and the baptizer would start to see how the connection isn't the same as real life, but can appear to be. Would the event of a baptism be perceived differently if instead of 1,000 frames of pictures paired to the audio of the event, you only received 100? A choppy video of jerky movements between the questions asked and the believer's belief and the trust in Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, and the dunk. What changed? What made this as unreal as it just felt? All we did was give you less of the lie. Maybe lie is a strong word here. Let's go with illusion. Still too strong? How about impression? What word would you like for a commentator to use when talking about the strange thing that happens when you start a service off at 1080p 60k streaming video of the baptism and then dial it back to 144p at 30k? All I changed was the resolution. The wires and the screens and the cameras are all still there, but I'm no longer using them to their fullest capacity. Is the baptism different or invalid because now you can see the pixels? Because the truth is, you could always see the pixels. You were just cool with it when they looked cool. When it looks dated, you want to leave such practices in the past. It's 4K video for true online ministries or bust. And if you don't believe me, type those bolded search terms into YouTube and see how many experts tell you the bare minimum for church streaming as far as resolution and cameras go. Church and tech don't mix, they stack. And baptisms are a great place to see this in action. Stack anything on water and see what happens to it. It sinks. And what is baptism again? The ceremonial submersion of a believer underwater to declare their belief and join the body of believers in church. It's what is happening to the viewer. Is that what's happening to the viewer on the screen? Well, no. They are just seeing a representation of what's happened to a person through the manipulation of pixels and sound waves in unison both ways. What about the other way? Is a church witnessing a baptism if they watch a father and son in a backyard swimming pool over Zoom while the pastor asks the questions from the stage? Again, no, because they are the ones being subject to audiovisual manipulation. No one on either side wants to be manipulation, but manipulation is so good these days that we all accept it as a proxy, with little or no obligation or objection. But the at-home Baptist is not with their church, and you could see that by dialing back the technological speed a bit. If a letter and an affidavit stating that the baptized person saying what the baptized person said before their dunk, pictures of dry clothes and then wet clothes with dates on them, and a photo of post-baptismal hug in the tank with their parents, would that suffice for proof of baptism? The only difference between that compartmentalized account and the 4K live stream is the amount and quality of pictures and audio and their union in video format. At some point, we let tech pass the pews and onto the stages of our church. We did so with very little or no discussion about the metaphysical and theological implications of saying something is one way when it's another. And when that brings us to the place where things meant to be done in public are now done in private, we have tragically all seen this kind of thinking before, especially in the church, but not in the ways you think. Porn behaves this way, just the other way around. Porn takes what's meant to be private and makes it public. Takes what's meant to be individually possessed and makes it widely available. It takes pixels and sound waves and tries its best to convince you it's flesh and blood, in every flavor and position you can think of. Are you as uncomfortable now as you were when we were talking about the video in 144p? Well, maybe you should be. The distinctions and definitions we use in our faith matter. Bread, wine, and water matter. They matter because they point to Jesus and have their roots in Jesus and are part of the instructions of Jesus. Who of all people would have known the way the internet could change the way the church does sacraments he left for us, yet we aren't told to interpret these practices into time and space as technology progresses. We are told to baptize people in the name of the Father, Son, and Spirit, and that the gates of hell will not stand against a church that does so. Now that we are decades into the use of these things for Christ's church's name, perhaps we should see if they're capable of use righteously. To jump into theologically deep but available waters and to declare like Christians before us that Christ's lordship over all, to make his will done online as it is in heaven.